Welcome back to this series of Dark Reading Fast Chats. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and joining us now is Jill Tyson, Practice Leader, Cyber Crisis Communications with Mandiant, part of Google Cloud. Jill, welcome to this Dark Reading Fast Chat.
Hey, Terry, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me to talk today about this important issue. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm a practice leader in Mandiant's Cyber Crisis Communications group. What we do is we help support clients through cyber incidents, including ransomware. We also help them with insider threat issues and with espionage. Now, before I joined Mandiant, I spent 22 years in government service, mostly in federal law enforcement and in the intelligence community.
Well, you are obviously well equipped then to talk about our topic today, which are the new cybersecurity disclosure rules designed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Talk about some of the changes that they've made there and some of the substance of them.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate it. So there's a lot of information about this new SEC rule. As you know, it was finalized on July 26th of this year. And what I want to say up front before we dig into the details of the rule is the key really here is about planning and preparedness. If companies can take two things away from our conversation today, it's make sure they have a comprehensive enterprise-wide cyber incident response plan, and then go ahead and test that plan with the team that would be responding to an actual incident. So now I'll turn real briefly to the rule. Basically, there are two parts to it that we are going to focus on here today. So the first is a cybersecurity readiness annual reporting requirement, where companies have to report to the SEC annually on an annual basis the controls they have in place, the mechanisms to manage and mitigate cyber threat and cyber risks. Part of that reporting requirement, companies also have to disclose to the SEC if they have members of their management who have cyber expertise. And now the second part of the rule, which is an ongoing reporting requirement, requires companies to notify the SEC within 4 days of experience a material cyber incident. Now, this one's tricky. The rule doesn't define material. There's a lot of information out there about materiality. And then we always encourage our clients to make sure they talk to their internal counsels and to their external legal counsels to understand those thresholds and those considerations of determining materiality.
Thanks, Jill. That's super useful context. Also curious about the kinds of organizations that are impacted by this rule. Is it related to company size, industry sector, something else? Tell us a bit more there.
Sure. So broadly speaking, it's publicly traded companies. And then also there are comparable requirements for foreign private insurers.
All right. And when do the new rule changes go into effect?
Great question. So that first piece of the reporting requirement, that cybersecurity readiness requirement that I mentioned, that goes into effect on December 15th of this year, so just a couple months out. There are some companies that fall under what's called a smaller reporting company. It's a subcategory defined by the SEC. They'll have an extra 6 months, so it will apply to them starting June 15th of 2024. Now, that second prong, the material cyber incident disclosures, that'll be, as I said, an ongoing reporting requirement, and it starts this year on December 18th. Now, there's one caveat here, Terry, that I want to cover real quickly, which is the SEC did include a public safety and national security exemption for reporting those material cyber incidents. So what happens is if those two considerations are in place, a company can go to the U.S. Department of Justice, and then they can issue a written letter over to the SEC requesting a delay in that public reporting. Now, we do think probably there won't be that many exemptions granted, but that's just an important point to consider in terms of the deadline.
Well, let's hope that those incidents are few and far between, eh?
Absolutely.
Talk about the recommendations that you have for organizations to ensure that they are ready just all across their enterprise to be in compliance with these new SEC rule changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So big picture, and I touched on this before, is, I'm big on it. At Mandiant, we're big on planning and preparedness, because when it comes to cyber attacks nowadays, it's a when, not an if. And so the best thing that companies can be doing is prepare for that day, that bad day. And then having this new SEC rule really puts a premium on that preparedness. And certainly in terms of if they're prepared, if they're testing their plans, that's something that would probably factor into that annual reporting requirement to the SEC about their cyber readiness.
You've made a few recommendations. Can you take a deeper cut at some specific steps that companies can take in the interim period?
Yeah. So, Terry, a cyber attack is really a whole of organization incident. It's a whole of organization response. And so that's why we're really pushing this comprehensive plan strategy, right? Enterprise-wide cyber incident response plan. It has to cover governance, risk, compliance, communications. It needs to identify stakeholders. It needs to spell out the different severity levels and thresholds. It needs to identify the crown jewels, which is really that most important stuff, that information and data the company has that the bad guys would be likely to target. And then one more plug on communications. So the plan definitely needs a section about internal and external communications. It's very important to have accurate communications internally and externally. And with this new SEC rule, those really have to be tight, because we want to make sure any communications are consistent with anything that gets filed with the SEC.
Well, Jill, great context and guidance about the new cybersecurity disclosure rules from the SEC. Thanks so much for joining us for this Dark Reading Fast Chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate it. And I'm definitely looking forward to our next Fast Chat as well.
Me too. We've been talking with Jill Tyson, Practice Leader, Cyber Crisis Communications at Mandiant, part of Google Cloud. This has been Terry Sweeney for Dark Reading. Thanks for joining us for this Dark Reading Fast Chat. We'll see you next time.